I've been speaking with senior leaders across healthcare organizations and northern communities as I build out the Roots of Change advisory. And I keep asking the same simple question: what is the hardest part of your job? Two answers keep coming back every single time: team accountability, which we'll talk about in a future episode, and loneliness. The second one surprises people when I say it because these don't appear to be isolated people. They're surrounded by staff and meetings and decisions all day long. So why do so many of them feel lonely at the top? And what actually changes it? I think I know, because I have lived both sides of this story myself. So keep listening. We're going to go deep on this today. Hi, I'm Diane. I spent over 25 years as a nurse and nurse practitioner before I became a healthcare leadership architect, system advisor, and patient-centered leader. This is the Roots of Change podcast, where we explore the invisible patterns that shape everything visible in our lives, our leadership, our relationships, and our systems. The idea underneath all of it is simple. Those with power must be responsible to those with less. And the work is about helping healthcare leaders, individuals, and systems find the courage to tell the truth about what is really running underneath the surface. Because what we can see clearly and what we are willing to look at honestly is what we are able to change. That is the work we do here together. I want to start at the beginning, because this is not just a story about healthcare leadership. It's a story about what I was taught leadership was, and how long it took for me to discover something completely different. So growing up, the leadership I watched modeled around me was simple. The person at the top is in charge. They know everything, they make the decision, everyone else follows. And that was just how things worked, and I absorbed it without even questioning it. So when I stepped into my very first leadership role as a young nurse, I did exactly what I had been shown. I tried to know everything and control everything, and I checked up on people, and I felt responsible for every single decision. I micromanaged without even realizing that that's what I was doing. And I have to say, it was exhausting. Not just tiring. I'm saying genuinely exhausting, like carrying a weight that never got lighter, no matter how hard I worked. And I remember thinking to myself, maybe I'm just not meant for leadership, because if this is what leadership is supposed to feel like, I don't want it. Then I became a nurse practitioner, and I got my first job working for a leader who was nothing like I had seen before. He listened, actually listened. He had a quiet, calm way of leading that I honestly mistook at first for weakness. And I thought, oh, this person is too soft. This is not real leadership. But then I started noticing what was happening around me. I was motivated in a way I had never been at work before. I wanted to come to work. I wanted to do more. I felt so supported and recognized. I felt like my opinion actually mattered, and that someone with authority actually cared about what I thought. I felt like I was genuinely part of something rather than just executing instructions from above. And this was the first time I understood that there was a completely different way to lead. And I never forgot what it felt like to be on the receiving end of it. And after that job ended, I went through years of other leaders, over-controlling leaders, passive aggressive leaders, leaders who ran things through fear, and leaders who simply avoided every hard conversation. And I always found myself thinking about my very first leader, wishing the people above me understood what he understood. So when I left the system and I built my own nurse practitioner on wheels service, I finally had the chance to lead the way I always believed leadership could be. Genuinely connected to the people doing the work, building the service around the real needs of the community rather than just around reports, targets, and policies. tapping in to what the people around me were actually good at, rather than trying to just do everything myself. And I want to tell you something. I did not feel lonely once during that time. And it wasn't because I had found better people somehow around me, but because I was leading in a completely different way. The spotlight was not on me. It was on the people I was there to serve and support. I was not trying to have all the answers. I was listening for the answers that were already there in the people closest to the work. And I experienced the same thing again when I came back from Mexico and did a grassroots contract here in Manitoba. I led beside the people, not around the policy book or a union book or around routine, boring meetings. No, the people came first and everything else got built around them. And the information that I received was honest and fast because the people knew I was genuinely connected to the ground as the director. They did not need to clean up the message before it reached me. They brought me real things in real time because they trusted that I actually wanted to hear them. And that is the opposite of lonely. Now let me come back to those senior leaders that I spoke with, the ones who said loneliness was the hardest parts of their job. So here's what I understand about why that happens. Inside a traditional hierarchy, a leader at the top receives information that has been shaped at every level before it reaches them. Think about that telephone game most of us played as kids. One person whispers a message, and then it gets whispered from person to person down the line. And by the time it reaches the end, the message barely resembles what started at the beginning. And remember, nobody was lying. Everyone adapted the message through interpretation and a little bit to fit what they thought the next person may have wanted to hear. And that's exactly what happens to information inside a hierarchy. The fear becomes some kind of staffing challenge. The toxic manager becomes someone dealing with difficult staff. The team that has stopped speaking up becomes a communication issue being worked on. And the leader at the top is then making decisions from a version of reality that may have very little to do with what's actually happening on the ground. So the leader is surrounded by people, but she's not hearing the real story from any of them. And of course, she feels alone. And at the same time, she's expected to be the authority, to have the answers, to never look uncertain. She cannot show doubt upward to the board without risking her credibility, and she can't show uncertainty downward without worrying about how her team will see her. So she carries it with her quietly and alone. A VP who cannot admit she's uncertain about something, a director who performs confidence in a meeting because showing doubt feels really risky. This dynamic runs through every level of a hierarchy, and at every level, it creates the same quiet isolation. So what actually changes it? It is simpler than most organizations have been willing to try. When a leader builds her leadership around people instead of around those reports, targets, policies, and hierarchy, everything shifts. The information she receives become honest because people are not filtering it anymore. The problems reach her much sooner because people trust that she actually wants to hear it. The ideas come to the surface faster because people actually feel like their input matters. She does not have to know everything because she's genuinely connected to the people who do. The pressure starts to lift, the loneliness goes away, and this is not because there's some magical new strategy or the whole org chart has been reorganized somehow, but because the relationship with the ground has changed. Small shifts make a big difference, including including the people in setting targets so that they feel a sense of ownership rather than obligation. Having real heart-centered conversations with your nurses and your housekeepers and community members, not just the VPs. Making it a genuinely safe process to bring problems to you before they become a crisis first. When you build leadership around the people first and everything else is second, you're not working harder. You're working with your whole organization instead of carrying it, what feels like carrying it alone. So here's what I also know from living this. You cannot create that kind of safety for other people until you're comfortable enough in yourself to stop performing. A leader who's secure in who he or she is, what they stand for, what they do not know, creates completely different conditions around them. You can then hear hard things without getting defensive. You can say, I don't know, without it costing your authority. You can trust the expertise of the people around you because you're not competing with them. So this is not weakness. This is the most powerful form of leadership I've ever seen or experienced. The old way, the command and control, reports first and people second, is exhausting and lonely by design. The new way, people first, ground truth, genuine connection at every level, is not just more human, it's more effective, and it makes the job so much easier. It makes the information better, and it makes the care at the end of the chain genuinely better as well. Because how we lead our directors leads to better managers, and better managers lead to better practitioners, and better supported and led and encouraged practitioners lead to better patient care. That ripple runs in one direction from the top all the way down to the people being served. So this is the movement I'm building. Patient-centered leadership where people come first. Ground level truth has a direct line to the executive table, and everyone's working towards a shared purpose. And it's not because that they've received a command to work towards a shared purpose. No, it's because they genuinely want to. Now, if what I've described today sounds like something you or your organization needs, I would love to have a conversation. My book, Rooted to Rise, The Rise of the Patient-Centered Leader, is available for pre-sale now. The link is in the description box and the show notes, wherever you're listening or watching. And if you're a healthcare executive or a senior decision maker who wants to explore what this could look like inside your organization, send me a direct message with the word roots, and we can explore whether a private conversation makes sense. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and I will see you on the next episode. Remember, the more power we hold, the more responsibly we must use it. Power is not demonstrated by control, it's demonstrated by how we care for those with less.